In this video, I really want to talk about using braid to a fluorocarbon or monofilament leader. This is something that has only continued to grow in popularity year over year, especially in the bass fishing community. And it's something that I find myself doing a lot more with different techniques. But there is one big mistake that can actually cost you a lot of fish when using braid to leader. And I want to talk about that today. But before we do, guys, this video is brought to you by my apparel company, Fin Fishing. I have USA made sun shirts. These are one of the only USA made sun shirts out there on the market. They're not made overseas, which that's fine. There's a lot of companies that do that and I totally get it, but there's nothing like supporting local. And right now, if you buy one sun shirt, you get the second for 50% off. It's one of the better deals that I have on the website right now. I'm gonna leave a link down below in the description for Fin Fishing. Click on it and you can help support this channel. You can support local. All right, let's talk about braid to fluorocarbon or braid to leader. Now, the first thing that I wanna say is if you use straight mono or straight fluorocarbon and you enjoy that, then you do not have to change. Like, there's nothing wrong with doing that. I believe the biggest thing in bass fishing is being confident in what you are fishing. If you're confident in what you're fishing, you're confident in your system, you're gonna catch more fish and you're gonna land more fish. And that, to me, is the most important thing that you can do. Now, when it comes to braid to fluoro, I have heard this argument that having one extra knot in between your lure and your rod only can cause issues. I'm gonna let you know that people who say that don't know how to tie a braid to fluorocarbon knot properly, because most knots, like I tie the FG, I also tie the Crazy Alberto, those are like almost 100% knots. I have never had any break off with those knots. I have broken off with the double uni before, but with those other knots, kind of the better quality knots, like it's almost 100%. So I will let you know that that argument to me is just false and it's not correct. Now, let's talk about this big mistake though that a lot of anglers do make with braid to fluoro. And this is something that I did for a number of years. And the biggest thing is that when you use braid to fluoro, it changes your rod that you use. This is the big thing that I really want to get across to you, because you cannot continue to use the exact same rod that you used to use for a technique when switching over to braid to fluoro, because braid to fluoro completely changes the dynamic of like your system. A lot of times if we're using mono or fluorocarbon straight, like there's a lot of give in mono and fluoro. Even in fluorocarbon, you hear a lot of guys say, hey, there's no stretch in fluoro. That's false, okay? Fluoro, like I did a test of 29 different fluoros. Most fluorocarbon stretches between about 17 and 24%. Like that's a lot of give. If you make a 100-foot cast, you can have that line stretch 17 to 24 feet if you think about that. Now, monofilament even stretches a little bit more. Now, the reason that that is so important is because if you take out that stretch, you take out that give, it really drastically changes this type of rod that you want to use. And when you use braid to leader, you're taking out the majority of that give, because braid stretches very little. Like there's probably about a 4% stretch in braid. Again, this is something that I've recently tested. There's a little bit of stretch, but it's almost zero. And so when you take that stretch out, when you take that give out, it changes the rod that you need to use. And let me give you a perfect example of this. One of the things that I love to do is flip and pitch like deeper grass lines. Now, when I used to do that, I would use a jig, I would use a Texas rig, I would use 20-pound straight fluorocarbon, and I would use a 7-foot, 6-inch rod, usually a heavy power with a fast action. That was the rod that I found was perfect for flipping and pitching kind of the deeper grass. And I used it a lot. I caught a ton of fish that way. Now, I started over the last couple of years switching to braid to fluorocarbon. And when I first did it using that exact same rod. Now that rod, like there's not a ton of give because it's a fast action rod. And now I don't have a ton of give also in my line. And what I found out is I started losing a lot of fish. I would set the hook in that fish, and then it would pop off sometime while I was bringing it in. Or I would swing in a lot of fish that as soon as they hit as soon as they came in the boat, they fell off the hook. And the big thing that I found out is that I was ripping holes in these fish's mouth. When I would set the hook with that bigger rod, I would rip a hole in that fish's mouth that was, maybe like this big. And when you have a really small diameter hook and this big of a hole, that fish can shake that if it comes up to jump. And that's because I didn't change the rod that I was using. Now what I do is I use a 7-foot, 3-inch, medium heavy power and more of a moderate action rod.
There's one. Didn't get a good hook in him. It's a little bit better one there. There we go. Okay.
I think that it is extremely important that anytime you use a braid to fluorocarbon or braid to monofilament, to really go to more of moderate action rods. Moderate, maybe even moderate fast action. I think that is really important because you take that give out of the line, that rod now has to it now has to be where the give comes, or else you're gonna do exactly what I just said. You're gonna rip big holes in those fish's mouth. And this is the same thing for a number of different techniques. Like I did this a lot with top waters as well. I used to use, I never used a stiff rod, but I used a longer rod with braid, with straight monofilament back in the days. And I used that long of a rod because I would make a super long cast out there and I'd have a fish hit me at the very end of that cast. And I felt like I needed to have a big distance, like a long rod to like pick up all the slack in that line to drive those hooks in. Now I use just a 7-foot, I think it's a 7-foot, 2-inch, medium heavy, moderate action rod because it's almost a direct connect. When that fish hits out there, I barely even have to set the hook with top water and with treble hooks to hook in to that fish. So it really changes your rod. That's really, really important to know. And like I said, if you don't change your rod to kind of make up for that zero stretch now that you're getting, then it can cost you fish. And so anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you realize what you should do now with your braid to fluorocarbon rod. And if you guys want to watch my most recent video, you can click this video right here. Please don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow.